Good afternoon and welcome to our statewide model programs of study in information technology. Thank you so much for joining us today. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to have a welcome from our team and then also ICCB. We're going to give you all a background on our model programs of study and that includes some policy alignment and also information about the role of our advisory committee. And then we're going to take a deep dive and talk about how we map and then review the guide itself, the information and technology guide itself. Then you all are in for like a lucky treat today. We have two model programs of study in action. We have Rock Valley Community College and also District 214 Wheeling High School. Then we're going to give some feedback and then next steps. Some quick notes here. So we highly encourage you all to be engaged in this webinar. That includes using the Q&A and also chat box. Also, this webinar is being recorded and the slide deck will be shared in the chat. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Janelle Washington.
Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon. I'm Janelle Washington, Director for Career and Technical Education at the Illinois Community College Board. And on behalf of ICCB, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's session on information technology. As always, I'd like to thank our partners, EdSystems, for leading the model programs of study work here in Illinois. These guys are wonderful exemplars that help to guide program of study development and improvement on the local level. So I encourage you all to reach out to EdSystems with any questions you have about the model program of study guides and how the models can be implemented in your own work. They are happy to assist. They always share their contact information, but I will encourage you to complete the survey because that is another opportunity for you to let EdSystems know if you like additional support regarding implementation. So make sure you fill out the survey at the end of the session. Additionally, EdSystems has a wealth of other resources available on their website, as well as many other professional development opportunities. So if you haven't checked these out, please go to EdSystems website and look at all the wonderful resources. With that, thanks again. Welcome everyone, and I'll turn it back over so we can get into the information technology webinar.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate that warm welcome. Again, my name is Megan Mitchell. I'm the Pathway Manager. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Juan Jose, to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Juan Jose Gonzalez. I am the Pathways Director for Education Systems Center, and thank you all for joining us.
And so EdSystems Center, who are we? So our mission is to shape and strengthen education and workforce systems to advance racial equity and prepare more young people for productive careers and lives in the global economy. So we do that through college and career pathways, bridges to post-secondary, data impact and leadership. And so some important things to note is that we are statewide, we have a wealth of community networks, and our work is extremely innovative. And so now we're going to give some background on our model programs of study.
So this is me. So why develop the statewide models or programs of study? So the primary goal of these programs of study is kind of to help local regions of the state, that includes high school districts, community colleges, and EFEs, to work together to create like an exemplar or a template from which that local community or that local region can adopt for their own use. And this is primarily for the focus of kind of implementing a program of study around the Career and Technical Education Improvements 5 plan. One of the other aspects of our kind of program of study that in our partnership with our Community College Board was really to seek out and identify priority dual credit early college courses that are foundational to certain industry sectors and that are like really capable and structured for statewide scaling. We also wanted to define certain technical competencies for a set of courses or along the program of study. And we also wanted to leave open an opportunity to kind of engage with employers in this sector. The audiences, as I've mentioned before, are definitely high school faculty working on pathways, working on their own high school level programs of study, but also community college faculty that are partnering with the local high schools, implement and creating their own programs of study. So within the college faculty space, that'll mean like academic deans, department heads, early college liaisons, and things of that nature. We also specifically target heavily EFE or Education for Employment System directors. And we have some upcoming presentations in February around architecture, construction, and energy, in March around finance and business, and April 19th around arts and communications as well. What you're seeing here on your screen is kind of the state pathways model. It's not an official model, but it's something that we've seen many institutions coalesce around. And that is that a program of study or a pathway should have very robust individual student planning, very kind of targeted career-focused instruction or coursework, robust work-based learning, and an attention paid to core academic subject areas. And as a pathway or a program study progresses, students should have access to kind of coursework that gives them some preliminary introductory stackable credentials, leads to further degrees and further kind of opportunities for semi-skilled and middle-skilled jobs and higher labor market outcomes as a result. We've also included in this diagram kind of the reference to the college and career pathway endorsement. That is something that, as a result of 2016 legislation, allows students to indicate a multi-year expertise in a pathway space, and they earn this kind of designation of the pathway endorsement on their high school diploma, similar to how they might earn a state syllabus literacy, or at the post-secondary level, maybe perhaps earn a college level minor. What you're seeing here on your screen is all the requirements for a high school student to complete the college career pathway endorsement. We're not going to deep dive this too much, but what I really want to focus on is there's certain academic and coursework pathway course sequence requirements, and that sequence or those requirements for the pathway endorsement became a North Star in our creation of programs of study. And we wanted students to graduate with multiple years of coursework and multiple hours of early college credit as a part of the program of study in high school, and that would naturally accelerate them and transition them to the post-secondary space. There's generally a lot of policy alignment in our programs of study. As I've referenced before, the Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act of 2016, which includes the scaling of college career pathway endorsements, but also transitional math and transitional English instruction throughout the state. We made sure that we made our programs of study with an eye and attention towards the Dual Credit Quality Act and the Model Partnership Agreement. We paid attention to career and technical education and the Perkins 5 funding. And we also paid attention to the state's ESSA plan, which really has a lot of kind of language around the college and career readiness indicator and college and career readiness for students throughout the state. And what you're seeing here is that if you're implementing a program study or pathway in alignment with kind of our templates and our frameworks, you're going to really set up students for a lot of foundational skills for a variety of careers. They're going to have a lot of soft and employability skills that are set them up for many different aspects of college and career, but they're definitely going to be and most prominently accelerated towards a career focused area, right? They're going to have multiple years of coursework within a certain industry sector, some of that coursework for early college credit, and that coursework is going to go beyond traditional CT and really round out their experience with the general education courses as well. And by definition, we're setting up students to be academically ready for post-secondary, right? Where they're taking some college level coursework and kind of making sure they're checking the box on English and math course requirements, so they seamlessly transition to post-secondary and avoid remedial education. What you see here on your screen now is that in the last 2 years, Education System Center has been able to create 8 model programs of study guides in the areas of education, health science, arts and communication, finance and business, so on and so forth. Each guide that you see here on your screen comes with a 1-page visual of our recommendations of coursework and kind of post-secondary pathways, but also comes with a 20-page explainer detailing kind of our reasoning, our thought processes, and things of that nature. With each of these guides, we also next slide, we also included the advice and counsel of a large advisory committee, normally around 15 to 20 individuals who helped create each individual guide because they were academic faculty for that industry sector, high school level administrators or teachers in that industry sector as well. And many times whenever possible, we included employer associations to help inform our program of study guide. They made sure we were kind of keeping track of the latest labor market trends, what were the right credentials and degrees to benchmark to, and really inform some key decisions along the way. What is the right pathway map approach? What courses should we be selecting as a part of our program of study, and which of those courses were apt and kind of highly available for early college credit and transferability? And they really helped us identify some key competencies that we had to make sure were kind of displayed as a part of the program of study as well.
All right, so now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into our mapping process. And so this process generally takes about 6 months, and it's comprised of all of these elements here that we're going to talk about individually. And so in this moment, we're going to take a deeper dive into how we identify high priority occupations, and also how we determine promising credentials and map to stackable degrees and certifications. And so what is a high priority occupation and promising credential? And so we use the Department of Labor data, the MIT Living Wage Calculator for the state of Illinois as a reference. And then we specifically define high priority occupations as a position that has positive growth in the state, and also whose salary is near or greater than a living wage of 1 adult plus 1 child in Illinois. And so a promising credential is a degree or certification that prepares the individual for entry into these particular occupations. And so we typically focus on credentials that are available within community colleges. And so these credentials may also be like a clear precursor or stackable credential to a high priority occupation. And so what you see here is like a snapshot of our desk research. And so we literally research various occupations, what you'll see to the far left. Then you'll see the median hourly wage. Then we ask ourselves 2 major questions, right? Does this particular job offer a living wage? Yes or no? And is there some growth in the state for these particular roles? Yes or no? And then we also document the entry point in terms of education, annual job openings, and then the percentage growth for this particular role. You'll see there are some green dots here. And so the green dots mean that these positions meet our threshold. The yellow dots are, we still have a little bit of question about those, right? It may be that the living wage does not meet our threshold, or there's no growth in the state. And those that are not identified are those that don't meet our threshold. And so here, what you'll see is an example of how we kind of map to from programs to particular occupations or careers. So you'll see there are guided transfer degree programs in business, accounting, et cetera. And then we talk about some of the entry-level bachelor degree positions in those particular roles. We do the same thing for regular associate degrees, specialty certificates as well. And then as you can note, the 2 asterisks in red are the roles that align with ISB CTE program study of matrix. And then also the double arrows are degrees that are stackable. Next, we're going to talk about how we identify strategic community college courses. And so in our desk research, we identify community colleges, but we also analyze promising credential programs right within those particular community colleges. So we have this huge spreadsheet, and we tally and label career focus and general education courses across the programs to determine the courses that appear most often, right, that are highly accessible for dual credit and have the potential for transferability and have some currency through our Illinois Articulation Initiative, or have an industry credential. So here's a quick snapshot of what that spreadsheet will look like. So you'll see the college CCC. We sampled Chicago community colleges here. The particular course, the title, we gave it a common name. We outline if there's a prerequisite. And then you'll see all the programs that these courses are a part of to the far right. And so this is, the same snapshot, but just a little bit closer. Next, we're going to talk about how we map to the secondary. Map secondary to post-secondary sequence. And so a couple of things that are important to note is that we recommend early college courses reasonably accessible to high school students. The goal is to have at least 6 career-focused credit hours by high school graduation. That is what we encourage our high school students to complete. We keep open the possibility for unique opportunities, work-based learning, or capstone courses. And then one thing that's so important to note during COVID is we encourage our partners to consider faculty credentials as well as course delivery. And so we know that courses are virtual as an option, more so than what they've been in the past, which is a huge benefit for our students. And so we suggest initial post-secondary courses and sequences that continue to accelerate the student onward. And then we recommend sequence and general education subject areas, including early college and AP supplements. Lastly, we're going to talk about how we identify technical competencies. And so we define technical competencies through selecting foundational courses in each model program study area. And so we map these courses to multiple credentials within the industry area. And so these courses can be accessed for early college, at the secondary level, and they are not currently recognized by Illinois Articulation Initiative. And so we determine a set of technical competencies for each course. And so that means that we look at various syllabi, and then from that information, we pull out what competencies best fit. So now I'm gonna turn it over to my colleague Juan to review the guide itself.
Great, thank you, Megan. So what we have here, I'll kind of spend around 5 to 10 minutes talking about kind of the recommendations generally in the program of study guide for information technology. But I think we're going to have a very robust kind of set of examples from Rock Valley College and also District 214. So bear with us. And also along the way, please feel free to kind of add in chat in the chat or in the Q&A specific questions about the courses, the sequences, and things of that nature. So I just wanted to kind of welcome everybody. We'll be monitoring the chat box heavily. So what you're seeing here is kind of our one-page visual of the model program of study for information technology. As we were doing our desk research of the various community college programs in the state, we really started to see a trend of like kind of a transfer kind of computer science and general education degrees, but also some general computer information systems and programming degrees at the community college, a big emphasis on web development and also emphasis on networking, but also the growing sense of cloud computing and cybersecurity, which we grouped into one as well. Next slide. So when we started looking at the occupations in the space that were available to and through the community college system, like I said, we grouped kind of some of those occupations into 4 buckets, which was computer information systems and programming, leading to roles such as computer systems analyst, computer user support specialist, and some of these roles kind of leading to immediately a living wage salary, or kind of stacking easily to further education or potentially a bachelor's degree and higher levels of salaries. Obviously, roles in the computer science department, we're going to have a significant median hourly wage, lots of growth over the next 10 years, and we're definitely hitting a lot of the benchmarks we wanted for our pathway development. Similarly, roles in web development, networking, cloud computing, and cybersecurity, although we must admit that some of these roles kind of are bounded by the definitions of the Department of Labor, and the kind of the IT space is ever evolving, and occupations and roles that are happening on the ground are kind of slow to make their way up to the Department of Labor, but we try to kind of group them and showcase them here in this chart as best as possible. That what we also saw is that although many roles kind of don't require a bachelor's degree, many of the people working in those roles happen to have a bachelor's degree as well. But we made sure to realize that it's not necessarily always required in this industry sector. As you see here, kind of in the post-secondary page, we're looking at kind of how one student might typically progress to and through the community college system into IT certifications, IT degrees, and IT kind of advanced technical degrees. We imagine a world where students can advance through kind of computer information system certifications such as A+, Cisco, networking certifications, move on to associate's degrees, and stack very nicely and neatly into bachelor's of science, whether it be bachelor's of engineering science in some cases or a general bachelor's of science degree. There was a lot of stackability among all the sectors and all the programs in this kind of space. Now let us focus on kind of the career-focused courses that we really kind of started to recommend and advise local regions to kind of partner around in this program of study. So at the high school level, we always recommend that students have some sort of orientation to the industry or to this sector, right? In the high school level, that might mean a CTE course or a introduction to computers, or introduction to computer science or things of that nature. In this space, we also recommended, if possible, that high school districts and community colleges partner together and offer the course Computer Applications for Business. This is technically an Illinois Articulation Initiative course in the business major, but many times it's very accessible to students. There's no students eligibility requirements for English or math, and it is a kind of a sufficiently accessible course that can be implemented for dual credit as early as freshman or sophomore year if your partnership allows that. It also kind of is a groundbreaking course that is both applicable to IT careers, but also we found for business and even construction careers as well. As students progress in their IT pathway in the skill development phase, we normally think of skill development as a place where students can take further and deeper coursework in IT and start to choose their trajectory or choose their path. So in one area, we had a general information technology pathway. And we really recommended students seek out kind of introduction to computer information systems, which we envisioned as a dual credit course. Many community colleges offer an intro level CIS course, intro CIS 101, 102, 103 type course that kind of students can really deep dive. Many times that course, if not able to be offered for dual credit, we found that typically there was an alternative available in the high school space, which was AP Computer Science Principles. Many community colleges offering the equivalent credit for the AP or the Intro CIS course as well. Progressing from left to right in the capstone or experience, we really recommend students, if possible, and if they have the sufficient math skills available, and if the high school or the community college can partner around offering this course, we really recommend students culminate in the IT pathway with a Computer Science 1 course. Computer Science 1 is typically equivalent to the AP Computer Science A exam that is offered in high school as a part of the AP College Board. But also that course is that is difficult to implement for dual credit because it is an Illinois Articulation Initiative course. It has a high level master's requirement. So what we recommended in this space is if community colleges and high schools can partner to offer that course for dual enrollment, online synchronous or kind of hybrid method, that would really make that course worthwhile. We also recognize that students have to have the sufficient math capacity to take that course, so we understand the difficulty in implementing that. For students who are maybe don't have the sufficient math to get through Computer Science 1 by their senior year of high school, we really recommended alternative kind of IT pathways for implementation and access as well. Many districts that we encountered as a part of our advisory committee were implementing kind of a mobile development, web development course that was many times aligned to like a national curriculum or to a kind of a third-party vendor such as Incubator, who had like a mobile development course. We found those courses very worthwhile in our program of study for the high school space because they draw student interest in and could lead them towards building towards the AP or the computer science 1 course as well in their senior year. Lastly, we didn't want to ignore that there was a lot of robust opportunities for networking coursework, right? Many school districts, and we'll hear about some of them here today, are implementing courses around networking, introduction to networking, and aligning to certain certifications around Cisco and kind of CompTIA as well. So we wanted to kind of have students have that opportunity to take those courses in their sophomore and junior year with dual credit if possible, and culminating in the capstone year with an intro networking course that is aligned to a specific IT certification. While we don't kind of designate which certification we most prefer, many community colleges have kind of an emphasis either on CompTIA or Cisco and things of that nature. We wanted to make sure that that thing was still happening in some capacity as well. At this post-secondary level, going back one slide, Megan. At the post-secondary level, we did want to make sure that students, when they enroll in their first year of college, whether it be a local community college or even at the four-year university, that they continue their sequence by progressing along their designated pathway, right? If they're in the general kind of computer science or programming pathway, they should continue with computer science 1 or 2 and potentially an intro to web development. A lot of those courses are universally offered in many community colleges and have a high degree of transferability as well. If a student is in the networking pathway, there's going to be they really should be pursuing that pathway course sequence with their local community college and whatever sequence or whatever kind of course numerics that may happen locally as well. Next slide. What you're seeing here on your screen now is our recommendations and our emphasis on the general education courses in IT. I will kind of bring us down to the math space. The IT pathways have a very kind of pivotal decision point for many students or many counselors implementing the pathway around math, right? If students have a sufficiently high math capacity that they're able to get to college algebra or calculus while in high school and pass that coursework, they're really going to be setting themselves up for some of the higher level IT coursework in computer science when they're in high school as well. But if they're not able to get to that, they really should be striving nevertheless for pre-calculus, transitional math, then puts them into the STEM pathway, or some level of statistics, because that will set them up equally importantly for general CIS degrees, general web development degrees, and also networking pathways at the community college level as well. And then like in all our programs of study, we really wanted to focus on the importance of English composition by their senior year of high school, either as an AP or as a dual credit course. And if the student can reach that they take at least a transitional English course, placing them college ready when they get to the post-secondary space. And in our program of study, in the back of the guide, you'll see that we kind of developed some course competencies for 2 key courses that weren't always kind of part of the Illinois Articulation Mission and weren't always transferable. With these courses, if your community college is offering one of these courses and you have certain set of learning outcomes and course outcomes and student learning objectives, we strongly encourage folks to kind of do a crosswalk of your syllabi with these competencies and making sure that they are aligning generally. These competencies were kind of formulated by collecting syllabi from multiple community colleges across the state, as well as kind of some of the course outcomes of some high school level courses, and blending those all together into kind of a master super kind of dual credit type course and competencies for those courses as well. So this set of competencies here is for Introduction to Computer Information Systems, which is typically offered in many community colleges. And the next set of competencies that we had was for, I think should go on the next slide, for Introduction to Networking. Right? Introduction to Networking is not an IAI course, but many community colleges are offering some sort of intro-level networking course. And we really strongly encourage folks to kind of do this crosswalk with your existing coursework to making sure you're touching on a lot of the same competencies that are typical across the system and throughout the state.
Now we're going to move forward and introduce Rock Valley Community College as our Part 1 Model Program of Study in Action.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Washer, and I am the academic chair for the Computers and Information Systems program at Rock Valley College. I also happen to teach at one of the local high schools as well. So you're going to hear a little bit of both. I'm going to try and stick with the community college though. So what we started out with this front page was just all of our degrees, because to kind of go with what Juan was talking about for the kind of the pathway. So we have 4 separate degrees with our programming. We've got networking and we have cybersecurity, but really those 2 are very similar. And then the web programming. And so we do have those 4 different degrees, but we really focused on the networking and the mobile app development for our pathway. And if we go to the next slide, this kind of shows you what we were thinking and what we have credit for through the high schools. So we could give credit to the high schools for our Introduction to Computers class, which is CIS 102. We have CIS 170, which is basically an introduction to programming course. It's object-oriented programming. And CIS 280 is our mobile app development course. So that's more along the lines of our mobile app development pathway for high schools. And then we have the PCT 110, which is our Network Plus. That one, everything that Juan talked about, it kind of goes right in with that. So we have our Network Plus, and then PCT 262 is our A Plus, which is the hardware side with some software in there, and then PCT 270, which is our Linux course. So it's kind of an introduction to Linux. The numbering that we have kept these numbers for a long time. PCT 262 and PCT 270, those are numbers that we had back in the 80s, like the 90s. So that's why they're kind of higher level numbers. So we haven't, that's why 110 is a lower number than the 262 and 270. So they correlate with our certificates, and we do stackable certificates. We have our Cisco networking certificate, which goes into our Cisco networking degree. And then you can go on to, it's an AAS degree. So it's an Associate of Applied Science. You can go on to like Rockford University or possibly Roosevelt University with the AAS. On the NIU and 4-year college side, you would do the C++ programming as part of an AA or an AS, which would be your CIS programming courses, and then go on to, like a NIU or even Rockford University too, but more of those traditional programming courses. The mobile app development correlates with our CIS Associate of Applied Science. So those are more kind of specialized courses. You get to take more courses in the programming areas. And not all of those courses will automatically transfer to 4-year universities. So, if you're transferring to a certain university, you just have to be careful of what courses you're going to take. So, and then we also developed the network technician certificate. I work closely also with our adult ed and ESL programs, and they had an ICAPS grant. And what they do is they have CTE courses that you can take while you're getting your GED or while you're learning, while you're going through ESL classes. So we developed the network technician, which is CIS 102, our introduction to computers, our PCT 110, which is the Network Plus, the A Plus, the PCT 262, and the Linux course. So it's those 12 credits, and you can get like a entry-level help desk job with that certificate. So we developed that with the ICAPS program, and then we ended up being able to use that as part of our pathways for high schools as well. So the visual basic programming, this is kind of an older slide, but that one is kind of going away. We're focusing more on C++ programming. And if you go to the next slide, I believe we talk about our challenges. I think this is probably the challenges and successes is probably what everyone is here for, right? And Dan's probably going to laugh at this, but this is one of our biggest challenges is the faculty qualifications. I actually came from a high school teaching high school with a provisional certificate because I didn't have the business cert to teach CIS, which was kind of crazy in my mind. So the high school faculty qualifications to teach CIS at a high school, you only need I shouldn't say only, apologize for saying that, but you have a business certification, right? You don't necessarily have to have exactly networking credentials or exactly our programming credentials like our faculty at the community college have to have, right? So that's one of the items that we had to work on and we are still working on. And it also happens to be one of our successes. It kind of leads into some of our successes. So for our networking pathway, you don't necessarily have to have a master's degree, but you need a bachelor's plus, some experience. In the programming pathway, if it's an IAI class, you have to have a master's plus 16 credits in that area. So in programming, and that is difficult for high school faculty because generally the math teachers are the ones that teach the AP classes for computer science. So just to get them qualified is a little difficult. And there looks like there's popped up with a question. I'm gonna, just because it's, what recommendations do you have for choosing programming languages in class? For instance, we teach a lot of Python and Java, but we don't teach C++. So I really like Python as a programming language to taught in class. That goes all over the place. You can use robots, that gets the students really interested in things. Java seems to be, that one I kind of always, I'm a little curious on why they teach that at the high school level, because it seems for us at Rock Valley College, it's an upper level course. Like generally people take the object-oriented programming, the kind of the intro to programming, and then they take C++, the intro version, and then after that they take Java. So it just depends on the school and the resources, but I would prefer Python and C++ from the community college level. And we just started putting in, we just sent it into ISB to get Python as a class, an official course at Rock Valley College. So you'll see Python popping up at community colleges and universities too, as a course that might be entered into like a cybersecurity pathway. Qualified faculty leaving, this is happening quite a bit. And not just leaving because they're going on to other things, but I have an enormous amount of faculty that are retiring. In fact, I have two. I'm going to have to hire this spring for at least one, if not two faculty that are retiring at Rock Valley College. So there's a lot of faculty leaving. So qualified faculty leaving and then finding someone to take their place. In fact, the reason I'm working for District 100 is they couldn't find a faculty member that was qualified to teach for them. So I made a comment about still having my high school teaching cert, and Nick Butenoff from District 100 jumped on that opportunity. So, and now it's hard for me to leave because I've got so many, great peers over there. High school faculty mentoring has been a challenge here and there because at Rock Valley, I'm the academic chair, but I'm also, teaching multiple courses. And for somebody to get access to me for questions throughout the semester, it's kind of difficult. We're emailing here and there. So we had some issues with faculty mentoring or just getting their questions answered, or having a place, just one spot to look for everything. And in the successes, I'll talk about what we did to fix that. The other issue that we had was teachers that were teaching possibly web development, and they were qualified to teach networking, and the transition from teaching web development or certain courses and then going on and teaching this new material. So we had, the transition issues with that. So I think in our successes, you'll find out. And in the next slide, if you move to the next slide, we'll talk about our successes. So with all of those challenges, one of the things that really we have our regional office for CTE is called CNC in our area. And so between CNC and our pathway leaders at the local high schools, we worked together to create boot camps for our programs. And it wasn't just for CIS. I think we did this for manufacturing and some other areas too. Business was another one. So over the summer before the pandemic, we offered boot camps so they could come to Rock Valley, look at our classrooms, have access to the teacher, and then have a couple of days of training from the college faculty. And it seemed to work out pretty well. And we did it for each one of our courses that was either articulated credit or dual credit. The other thing that we did, and this is just a recent item that we added, we used our LMS and we created class shells for both our faculty at Rock Valley and the high school instructors to access. And I've worked with Moraine Valley College, and John Sands at Moraine Valley, he just is very generous and just is like, here's the curriculum I use what you can. He's a fantastic, and Eric Spangler, he unfortunately passed away a while ago, but they were just like, here, take all of this. This is our stuff. We don't, use what you can. And so that's how I am, since they were that way for us, that's how I am. And so I just put everything up there. And, the easier you make it for high school instructors, the more they're going to use your materials. So that was one thing we found out. So the LMS class shells, the problem with the class shells that I found is if you use Cengage or MyLab IT or any of those online, when you share your class shell, it's going to be linked to your old information. And so they might not see everything. So I have to figure out a different way. I'm probably just going to list all of the assignments that I use from the online system. For successes, I'm not very good at talking about what we've done in our department and what has been successful. And so I asked Kara Schultz, who is our Dean of Early College, because I think that's a success, actually having a department that works with our partners. And she said that my personal relationship with District 100, the fact that we are working closely with them and we get constant feedback from both sides, we can talk to them directly, and the fact that I'm actually in the classroom, working with them. So she mentioned that, us working together closely with them has helped the pathway immensely. The other success is we actually do have the IT networking pathway implemented at BHS, at Belvedere High School, Belvedere North High School, and then Harlem High School. So we have we have 2 qualified instructors. We're working on a 3rd qualified instructor at those high schools. And the part of the thing that Kara had mentioned was that I'm with those high schools, with the Department of Early College. I'm working closely with them to figure out the credentials and to figure out, what classes that some of these teachers are qualified to teach. And if they can't teach, dual credit is definitely where you get sticky on the qualifications. So if it's a dual credit course, you really have to follow those qualifications, more. If it's articulated, we don't have to worry about the qualifications as much, and you don't have to worry about the books as much. So, we've got different ways that we can explore, different routes that we can look at. The other thing with exploring these pathways is trying to figure out the books that the high schools can use. What expenses can they have? And, computer science hardware, ripping apart computers, putting them back together can be expensive, but we have found different ways and explored different ways to make it less expensive for some of the high schools. And actually using Cengage or MyLab IT or Test Out, I think is the other one, has been pretty economical for those high schools. Exploring future pathways, we are looking into cybersecurity because it is so close to networking, and cybersecurity really has exploded here in the pandemic. So we are looking at future pathways. I'm actually working with John Sands at Moraine Valley College and the Center for Academic Excellence in creating pathways for cybersecurity for high school teachers. So it's a brand new thing we're working on. The final thing is all of our pathways do correlate to industry certifications. So as Juan said, we want to make sure we're correlating with the CompTIA A+ and the Network Plus certifications. And our Linux class actually does kind of go towards the Linux certifications. And if you go to our next slide, this is our current pathways. Our networking pathway is the most popular. The coding pathway, our high school faculty do not have the qualifications generally to teach the CIS 170 and the CIS 280. It's unfortunate. It's one of the things that we're still working on. We're trying to figure out ways to train our high school faculty to teach our courses. So, we're still working on it. It's probably going to be a continual process, but right now the networking end of things is working pretty well. And we have it in 3 different schools. So we're pretty happy with that. And if we go to the last slide, what's next? I'm big into cybersecurity. I'm getting my doctorate in cybersecurity. So that's, I'm a little biased, but that is probably the next pathway that we'll be looking towards. We at District 100, we always talk about what to name the pathway, what's going to get kids or students into this pathway, what's going to get them motivated. And we thought mobile apps development would get them really, into taking the classes and going into programming. And that wasn't necessarily the case. And we named the networking pathway networking and coding because we thought maybe the coding would get them interested. So that wasn't necessarily the case either. So we're also wondering if maybe cybersecurity is probably going to be one of them. I think if we put like what they could make in the future, what their future salary could be, maybe that will get them going. So that's what we're looking towards and trying to get started into the high schools.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I definitely appreciate all of that great information that you just shared. And so now we're going to move forward with our model program of study and action part 2 with District 214 Wheeling High School.
All right. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dan Widener. I'm one of the associate principals at Wheeling High School. I kind of put up a little bit of information here about District 214 and Wheeling. In part, I can serve a little bit of a unique dual role. So in terms of our IT pathway and career pathways at District 214, which are definitely a central part of our academic model, I had an opportunity to really lead some of those efforts at district office over the previous years as we were developing up our opportunities and kind of revitalizing our IT pathway. But then had an opportunity, I transitioned to a building leadership role to really get into the weeds of how are we implementing these opportunities. I will say it's one thing, with all respect of all of our district friends out there, it's one thing as we develop theoretical pathways and programs and develop partnerships. But I think as for all those in the schools, we really recognize that being able to move to a form of implementation, getting these opportunities in the hands of our students, getting our students to benefit. I will say particularly at Wheeling High School, where, there's a lot of power that these programs can bring. We're a majority minority school with a high EL and low income population. When we're talking about career pathways and providing these opportunities to our students and ensuring that all means all, our schools need this. And pardon me, my phone's ringing right next to us. There we go. And I think that we've had a lot of success at Wheeling and still have some significant ways to go. So I look forward to kind of playing a little bit of a dual role as I go through this presentation, talking about some of the district work that we did, but also looking at that local implementation. When it comes down to it, what are the nuts and bolts, aspects of equity, et cetera. So within District 214 at Wheeling, we really do have 2 different programs of study within our IT career pathway. And I love what Stephanie had said in terms of that naming of pathways. And we really kind of went through much of that as we were developing up and revitalizing what we have within computer science, IT, that field, and that was probably about 8 years ago. So we do have one pathway, it's our information technology and network systems, which I will note we kind of got on that cybersecurity bus a couple years ago, really looking at that as both being an area of opportunity to develop our pathway opportunities towards, but also really as one of those hooks. We saw success with our Cyber Patriot teams or hooks, their students becoming interested. And certainly if you look at the field and the job opportunities out there, they're immense. But also we took that opportunity, and I'll speak a little on that orientation side. When we really kicked off this pathway 8-9 years ago, across our entire district of 12,000 students, we had fewer than 250 enrollments in IT and computer science. So if you think across 6 different buildings, essentially, we were maybe running 1 or 2 courses anywhere in the computer science IT field. One of the things that we did find, and this was right as we were moving towards a 1-to-1 district, every single student was getting an iPad in hand. We did jump on that mobile app development move and developed up new coursework, really related to iPads, devices that every single one of our kids now had in their hands, and used that as a hook and kind of a recruitment tool. I'll say 8 years back, that was very, very successful. We went from about 250 enrollments to over 1,200 in about a matter of 3 years. So we saw a lot of success. One of the things that I'll talk, later on, the what's next. I think we may be seeing some similar things to what Stephanie had mentioned, that is beginning to wear off a little bit. So we're looking in a similar manner of what is that next hook? What is that orientation? How do we best both orient students to the field, but also get them interested, get enrollments coming in? If you want to go to the next slide. We really have kind of taken a hybrid approach between dual credit, AP certifications throughout the pathway. And some of that is out of, some of that is out of the historic nature of our program that we were building from existing opportunities. Those 250 enrollments, we actually had a decent sized networking program and a great partnership with Harper College, going through their A+ up through Net+ dual credit opportunities. One of the areas that we definitely need to be able to build and become a little bit more robust was on that coding side. We had some opportunities with AP Computer Science A, but then when the principals class came out, that was a real natural fit within our pathway. It's kind of a second level coding class that our students would take. One of the things I will note, we do, and we're kind of a unique school district. We have 2 separate dual credit partners in this area. And I'll speak a little bit later. We brought Moraine Valley Community College on, so another plug for John Sands and crew. As we were looking at what some of those extensions to our pathway were, specifically in the area of cybersecurity. I'll speak to our apprenticeship program, and really just looking at the nature of the different dual credit programs. Harper, we really had alignment with the vast majority of the dual credit courses on the IT side that we could support. And Moraine Valley was able to provide some additional depth, specifically when we're looking at those opportunities in cybersecurity. Go to the next slide. So kind of paralleling a lot of the work that Juan Jose had noted about the model programs of study, we can kind of give a couple clicks on this one. When we look at our orientation opportunities, we're starting as early as middle school with our students. We do after school programming. We are solely a high school district. Oh, I'm back one, there we go. But really trying to orient students either right when they're coming in freshman year or earlier if we can get some of those ideas in mind. I'll note a lot of that's some of our equity outreach, that we know that there's underrepresented populations, particularly in the fields of IT. And if we can break some of those stigmas or really develop some of those mindsets in students as early as possible, we've actually seen a lot of success in that area. When we go to the skill development and what we would really call that connection and extension to what we're doing, we're looking at AP dual credit coursework, the certifications I noted. We have a very robust internship program that we have students doing 60 and 90-hour internships. But I think one of the areas that we're really excited is bridging that gap between what are we doing in the academic space and what are we doing in careers. And we've launched, it's a full youth and registered apprenticeship program in the areas of IT and cybersecurity, which I think the next slide. Oh, and that cuts off the page a little bit, which is fine. This is really our capstone opportunity that we're allowing our students to participate in a non-traditional senior year. We have two current areas that we're supporting, both a registered and a non-registered youth apprenticeship. So one is a cybersecurity technician and the other is an IT generalist help desk, where we're really looking at employment competencies, trying to back map those through our programs as early as freshman year, but also acknowledging that the area of IT is really specialized. And we have a number of different career fields that we do have students that if they go through an entire pathway at the high school, really are dedicating time that they can be prepared for. And we're seeing this with some of our apprentices. But the reality is at the high school level, we can only specialize so much. And some of that is through credentialing. Some of that is through, as we're building sections, and in order to run a section, you need to have, 18 or 25, 18 to 24 students. We may not get critical masses of students who have the same level of preparation, the same level of interest. So we've really found that looking towards youth apprenticeships, looking towards these extensions that we're using our industry partners to help us continue our students' learning has been really, really valuable. And it provides our students a real life opportunity to do real work, continue their education. They're earning dual credit, they're earning certifications, as they're also being paid, which is addressing some of our key aspects of equity as well, as some of our students aren't able to participate in some of these extensions to the school day unless if there are wages aligned with it. Next slide. So I'll say some of our successes. We have seen some significant enrollment growth. We've actually been able as a district to move and continue to move past that 1,200 mark. We're right around about 1,500 students in our pathway district-wide. So we've seen that as being a huge area of success for us. And really it's through kind of the modernization of our pathway offerings. So continuing to try to stay up with the tide, if not kind of leading it in terms of what's next thing. So both our students see the connections, our students see the opportunities, as well as employers and those that we're trying to bring in. We've definitely invested a lot of time and energy in developing relevant capstone experiences. So once we get students oriented, how do we provide them the very best of the best that we can within our pathways? Next slide. I think some continuing challenges, and I should note the teacher recruitment training, that was a huge hurdle that we were actually able to overcome. And I will say not in easy ways. We were sending teachers off for multiple week industry boot camps so that they are ready and ready to go. On a little side story, when we launched our mobile app program, which we're using the Swift programming language, we sent our teachers off for the summer, and literally at the beginning of week 2 of their 2-week program, that's when Apple announced they're moving from Objective-C to Swift. So I think that really illustrates some of the continuing challenges of the IT field. It is so rapidly moving that even when we thought we were on the very, very cutting edge, Steve Jobs hopped out on stage and said, hey, guess what? We're re-releasing a whole new program, and we had to look at a new way to make sure that our programs could remain relevant, remain up to speed. I think, the second bullet point there, it's a continuing challenge of figuring out what is that next trend. We were very fortunate and kind of looked at cybersecurity. There were big question marks around that, whether we were going down the right road 4 or 5 years ago. It's appearing like we made some pretty good calls, but that could have been a miss. And those are just some challenges that we have. And then really sustaining and growing the role of industry partnership. As I understand it, the professionals who are out there, their time is really valuable. Finding programmers, finding network specialists in industry is hard enough. And then working with those partners and saying, hey, can you come partner with us in the school so that we can develop the pipeline? That's a really big ask. So we've been fortunate with some key partners, but that has been a challenge. Next slide.
Dan, did you see that Juan put up a question for us?
I did not, but let's see what.
So he said, let me see here. Many employers in the Chicagoland area have indicated a need for data analytics and cloud computing. Where do these roles align with existing programs? Is that programming? Is it networking? Something new? Just had this conversation yesterday with one of my faculty members at Rock Valley. Programming generally is where that's going to be. That is higher level programming too.
Which, and I will say some of that is we're looking, what's next? And I'll jump down to that second point there is really the redevelopment of our orientation experiences. As we view our orientation experiences in 214 at Wheeling, we want to provide students a little bit of content, but a lot of knowledge of where they can go from there. So using those as jumping off points, that things like data analytics, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, mobile app development, cybersecurity, students get a little teaser of that so that they can see themselves, whether they're a 7th grade student coming over in our next generation engineers program, or they're a freshman, or maybe they're a senior who hasn't quite found where they want to go post-secondary, that they're able to start developing some of that career decision-making, the awareness of that. So one of the things that we're underway with right now is what is that next redevelopment of our orientation courses? We have the students, are we providing them the right opportunities, the right awareness? Professional development for teaching staff is always key. I have a retirement at Wheeling High School. So if we got a high quality programming teachers out there that everybody wants, we're in the midst of that right now. And then it's really just expanding both the experiences that we have, and I would say also a key lens for DEI. We do not have equal representation across our programs, whether we're talking our students' languages, whether we're talking race, whether we're talking gender, and trying to find ways that we can actively address that. That's one of our key lenses that we're working with at Wheeling. And
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. So as we have our speakers here, I have a few questions that I want you all to kind of grapple with. So is there something that is still circling in your mind? Are there any things that you're questioning or that you're questioning in the moment? Is there a thought that maybe squares you're thinking? And is there like a takeaway that you'd like to share? And so I would encourage participants to go ahead and drop some of that information in the chat. Again, is there something that's circling your mind that you're still questioning, a concept that squares your thinking, or if you'd like to share 1 to 3 takeaways with us, that'd be great. Well, if there aren't any additional comments or thoughts, please know that we are available via email. So if anything pops up after this webinar, please feel free to shoot an email over our way. And so we're going to have a survey. And so if you have a smartphone, I'm going to ask that you kind of toggle your smartphone over your screen to the QR code, because that gives you the direct link to that survey. So we just kind of want to know more information about how you feel about the model program of study itself, the effectiveness of the advisory committee if you participated, and also really review the effectiveness of this webinar. So if you wanted to go back and just kind of take a screenshot or a picture of this here, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, we've linked the survey in the chat so that you can go ahead and click on that as well, another access point. A few upcoming webinars. We have architecture, construction, and engineering, February 22nd, finance and business services, March 15th, arts and communications, April 19th. Please feel free to register and share that information with your colleagues as well. We have some upcoming webinars, upcoming model program of study guides that are in the works in terms of creation, and that is in human and public services and also culinary and hospitality. And so if you know anyone that's interested in joining those advisory committees, please let us know. We'd love to have more conversation with you about that. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Juan to kind of give some information about IWIN.
So for those of you also looking to implement pathways or programs of study and you need a little more support around the work-based learning components, I really invite you to kind of check out our Illinois Work-Based Learning Innovation Network that is led by my colleague, Heather Penzek. She's monthly on a similar cycle to our model programs of study guides. She's kind of leading kind of discussions, webinars around work-based learning, whether it be internships, apprenticeships, team-based challenges, career exploration in a particular sector that aligns with our model program of study. She has kind of records those webinars and those information, has examples from the field from various high schools and community colleges implementing work-based learning. So we really encourage you all to also seek out that resources and sign up for our newsletter here in the slide deck as well.
Thank you very much for joining us. You all have a great day.